Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to make the Autumn Amore scarf, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. This pattern is part of the Autumn Amore mini crochet along happening October 2018 on mooglyblog.com. Again, please go to the link in the description where you'll find the matching patterns, giveaways, and more fun stuff happening with this crochet along. Now let's go ahead and get started with the scarf. For this pattern, we'll be using 3 colors of Red Heart Amore. I'm using Whisper, Earl Grey, and Chamomile, and you'll also need a USK 6.5mm hook. This one is by Furls. Now the Autumn Amore scarf comes in 3 different options. There's a kid size, an adult size, and you can just sew the ends together and add a border for an infinity scarf. I've also listed an alternative width. Again, go to the link in the description for the written pattern for all of that information. Now, this scarf is made by floating the yarn along the sides. So, as you make each row with one color, you'll pick up the next color in the pattern from that size. So you don't need to cut your yarn. At the end of this scarf, you should only have 6 ends to weave in. Now, this scarf, as I said, comes in a couple different sizes. The kid size scarf is 6 inches wide by 48 inches long. The adult size scarf is 6 inches wide by 68 inches long. These are just sort of standard lengths. Obviously for older kids, you'd want a full size adult scarf, but the kid size scarf is more for like 3 to 10-year-olds. Younger kids, generally speaking, it isn't recommended rather that they wear scarves just for safety reasons. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. Okay, so to begin our scarf in either kids or adult size, since they're both 6 inches wide, we're going to start with a chain of 26. So go ahead and make a slip knot and use your first color and make 26 chains. After you've got that done, then it's ready to start. Then we are ready rather to begin crocheting row 1. So what we're going to do is skip the first 3 chains closest to the hook and single crochet in the 4th chain. I like to work in the back hump rather than under the top 2 loops of the V, but that's personal preference. So you can do whichever you prefer. So again, I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, skip all those, single crochet in the next. There we go. And those 3 skipped chains are basically going to count as a chain 1 space. They're right at the end of the row when we come back the other direction. Now we're ready to begin the repeat that will take us on across the row. We chain 1, skip the next chain, and single crochet in the chain after that. There we are. Working that first chain row is always a little fiddly, but just take your time and chain 1, skip 1, and single crochet in the next. And we're just going to continue doing that all the way across for row 1. Chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet in the next. So when we get to the end of row 1, we should have 12 single crochets and 12 chain 1 spaces. Now remember that chain 3 we skipped at the very beginning is going to count as one of those chain 1 spaces. So I'm just going to continue working across here for row 1, and I will see you when we are ready to finish up our first row. All right, and there's the end of row 1. And you can see I've pulled up a loop to begin my single crochet, the last single crochet of row 1, number 12. But I'm not going to finish it because what I'm going to do is pull up my second color, color B, and finish the stitch with the second color. I'll just pull the yarn right over my hook and pull it through both those loops to finish the stitch. There we are. Now you'll see I've left a good 6 inches or so I can weave that tail in when I'm all done. But otherwise, I'm just going to leave everything hanging. I'll leave the color A connected here so I can pick it up later when I need it again. And I'm just going to continue working with color B. Now, as I do that, I might use my fingers that aren't holding the hook or tensioning the yarn to sort of hold onto these ends for the first few stitches just to secure them as I turn and work back the other way. But pretty soon they'll be just hanging out there on the side, no problem. So let's go ahead and begin row 2. I'm going to start with a chain of 2. Get that little hair off the yarn here. There we go. 1 and 2. Now that's a turning chain and a chain 1 space. Remember I said that those 3 skipped chains at the beginning of row 1 would count as a chain 1 space. This chain 2 is actually going to count essentially as a chain 1 space again, because then we're going to skip that last single crochet we made and go into the chain 1 space. There we are with a single crochet. We're not going to go into the actual chain stitches, just into the chain spaces for this pattern. Let me center up here a little bit more again. We're going to do our repeat again, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain space. And that is really our repeat across. Chain 1, I'm going to skip the next stitch, single crochet in the chain space. On across. That is the fundamentals of the moss stitch. And indeed, every row of this scarf pattern after this are the same until, of course, we get to our little edgings there at the end. But otherwise, we just chain one, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain one space. There we are. Just working my way on across. And then, by doing that, every single row of this pattern, if you're making it the 6-inch width, will have 12 single crochets in it. So you can see how this actually goes very, very quickly. It's just a matter of how many rows you want to make for your length. So here I am at the end again, and I want to show you specifically this part. This is where I had that chain 3 right there. So I'm going to go right into that space and pull up my loop. But now I'm on that last stitch, so it's time to add my third color. So I'll pick up my chamomile here. Again, I want to leave a good 6 inches or so. Yarn over with that color and pull it on through to finish that last stitch, like so. And then again, I'm just going to leave those colors hanging out there on the side and make the same repeat again for rows 3 through however many you're making for your size. We start with a chain 2, pull those out of the way here, find that first chain 1 space, skip that first stitch, make a single crochet, and then begin our repeat across. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next. You can see how quickly this really can get going, especially if you're an experienced crocheter who's already familiar with these stitches. If you're not, it's a great one to learn with. Especially for this scarf pattern. I would definitely make the scarf before the hat, the matching hat, if you are a beginner. We're just kind of working our way down the body here. Up next with this stitch pattern, I'll be doing a pattern with for mitts, as well as a cowl. So we've got some really fun things in store, and they're all going to feature this moss stitch in different ways. So here I am at the end of row 3. You can see we've got all our beautiful colors already worked in there. I'm working my way back across this direction. I'm ready to make that last one. I'm going to go right in that chain 2 space that we started the previous row with. And then of course I'm going to stop there so I can yarn over with my next color. At this point, this is where it should be hanging out on the side here, and we're just going to float our colors right along the side. I want to shake it out here so I don't get those little ends. I don't want the ends that we're going to weave in. I want the one that's still attached to my ball of yarn. So I'll find that one right there, yarn over with it, and pull it on up through the stitch. Now, this is where I like to just sort of wiggle it back and forth a little bit, just to make sure the tension's right. Pull down on that other working yarn, because I don't want to make the floats along the side too tight, because it could pinch the fabric down and squinch the sides of our scarf, and I don't want to make them too loose so that they stick out the side. They just want to stay nice and even right along the sides of the scarf so that when we make our border at the end, they'll all get covered up quite nicely. And then again, it's just the same repeat again. Chain 2, skip that very first stitch, go into the next chain 1 space, and with a single crochet and chain 1, and skip the next stitch on across. And then again, when you get to the end of this row, that next color, which was our color B, will be hanging right there, waiting to be used. And we'll leave this one off and pick it up the next time we come by. So with 3 colors, the moss stitch pattern here, working each row, and honestly, any pattern, if you're changing colors every row, 3 seems to be the magic number. You're always going to have them hanging out there. You're never going to have too many floats along one side, and it just tends to work out really nicely. If you wanted to make this scarf or this whole set of patterns with only 2 colors, then for the scarf in particular here worked in rows, you'd want to work 2 rows of each color before you switch colors. Otherwise, you would have to cut the yarn after every row, and that would, of course, not be nearly as much fun. So we are almost at the end here, and I think you've got the idea. It's just single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch. When we get to the end there, we pick up that next yarn that was waiting for us. Oops, got to start the stitch first. There we go. Then I can pick up that yarn and yarn over and finish it off. And then, of course, chain 2 and come back the other way. So I'm going to make a few more rows here, and then I will demonstrate how we add the edging. If you are making the kid size scarf, you'll want to work for a total of, let's see here, I'm checking my instructions, 204 rows, just like this. You'd end up on a color C row if you're using 3 colors. For me, that would be the chamomile row. If you're making the adult size scarf, you'll want to work for 288 rows. And then we'll be ready to begin the edging. Okay, so here I've got my little swatch and I'm ready to begin my edging. I'm going to pretend this is a full-size scarf. So I've cut my yarns because I want to use my color B to make my edging. and that wasn't waiting for me on this side. You could use whatever color you want, cut the yarn, don't cut the yarn, work another row if it gets you back to that side, whatever you like to do. It's a scarf, so it's pretty darn flexible. I'm going to go ahead and finish my last row with my border color. There we are. Drop that end again. And then for the first section of the edging, since we're going to be working all the way around our scarf, all 4 sides, this first section, we're just going to work back across that last row of the scarf. And this is going to be identical to the previous rows. So just as before, we started with a chain 2 and then single crochet in that first chain 1 space, then chain 1, skip 1 on across. It's not until we get to the end of this row and we turn to go down the side of the scarf that we have to do something different. So I'm most of the way across here, so I'll just finish up this first section of edging round 1. And again, this is all in the written pattern as well. If you want to reference that or follow the written pattern along, it's a great way to learn how to read written patterns if you're not familiar with them already. All right, so here I am at the end. I've got my chain 1, and then I've got this chain 2 space right here at the corner. In this chain 2 space, which is we're treating, of course, as a chain 1. We've been treating it as a chain 1 this whole time. We are going to work a single crochet right in that chain 2 space, then we'll chain 2 and go right back into that space again. And that helps us turn our corner. Then we're ready to begin working along our first side. Now what I like to do for round 1 here is we're going to chain 1, skip the next row, which I know is a gray row, and then we're going to make a single crochet in the side of this row here, this next one here. This is where that chain 2 space was to begin this row. So it's a really easy place to go ahead and work our single crochets. Chain 1, skip the next row, go down to the next one. And you'll notice too that as I work, I'm catching those little floats that were along the side. Not so much the ends, those I want to weave in later, but the little floats that were carried along the side of our scarf, I'm just enclosing those right inside those stitches. Now, when you get to the end of this first side, oops, there we go, you'll come to probably another chain 2 space. If you've worked an extra row, you might not, but we'll be handling that over here, so you can just switch those around. When you get to the chain 2 space here at this corner, we're going to do the same thing we did in the other one. Go right in there, single crochet, chain 2 again, and single crochet right back in that chain 2 space. Then we're ready to work across our foundation chain. You can chain 1, skip that next stitch, and single crochet right in that chain 1 space. Where we skipped those before, those chains, those become chain 1 spaces as we make our border. So it's exactly the same thing as before. Should be very familiar. Even though you're working into the foundation chain, you don't actually have to go into any of those individual chains. You can go right in that chain space like we've been doing. So it is just that much faster and more convenient. So we work our way across here. And then when we get to the end of this row, if you've been thinking ahead, you'll know we have a single crochet there rather than a chain 2 space. So we'll have to handle this one a little differently. Again, if you made an extra row or changed it up a little bit, you might encounter that single crochet stitch here on this end, but whenever you encounter it, here's how you go ahead and handle it. All right, so I've got my single crochet in that last chain 1 space there, and I'm ready to go around the corner, but I've got a single crochet right there. So instead of chaining 2, I'm just going to go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to skip that chain, that single crochet in the corner. I'm not going to work into it on this side or on that side. I'm going to come all the way over here to the side of the work where I've got another chain 2 space and make my single crochet right there. Now we're going to do 2 rounds of edging. So when I come back, I'll work into that chain 3 space just as I work into this chain 2 space at this end, and they will even right out. So then I just work up the other side the same way I worked down the previous one. Chain 1, skip the next row, single crochet in the side of the next row. Just find those chain 2 spaces that you actually started each row with, and it makes it so much easier, whoops, there we go, to add this first border round. Just got to make sure you don't accidentally pick up those little ends that you want to weave in later. Get those out of the way. There we go. Now when you've worked your way up that last round, or that last side rather, then you've got your chain 2 that you started the edging with. So what I like to do here is chain 1 to skip over that last row there and just make a slip stitch right into that chain 2 space, like so. And with that, we're ready to begin round 2 of our edging. Okay, so to begin round 2 of the edging, I'm going to continue with my color B, and you can continue with whichever color you like to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with a chain 1, and then I'm going to go right back into that chain space we joined to and make a single crochet. And then I'm going to continue our basic moss stitch on around. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next. chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next. You can see this is just going to give us a really nice solid border all the way around. I have found with the moss stitch, if you try and work a single crochet in each row along the sides, it turns out to be way too many stitches. So this is really just the simplest way to add a border to the moss stitch. So we're going to continue on across until we get to our chain 2 in the corner here. So I'll get a few more stitches made here. We're almost there. Each row is pretty quick, but it is a lot of rows if you're making a full-size scarf, of course. There we go. So I've gotten to the end, and I've got my single crochet, chain 2, single crochet from the previous round. So I've got my chain 1 here to skip over this one, and then right in that chain 2 space, I'm going to do the same thing to make a corner. Single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet right back in that same chain 2 space. Then I'm all set up to continue down the side. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. On down the side here. Now, one thing I'll note is for this round, I'm not trying to cover up any of the floats. Those should have gotten covered in the previous round. If you pull them up at this point, you'll get some color stranding along the back and it'll be a little more obvious. So you want to avoid enclosing those in this round. So I've worked my way down to the corner here. I've got another chain 2 corner space. So I'll work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet right in that space. And then again, our repeat on across the bottom. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. The only real challenges here, from here on out, will be those 2 corners again. So let me just get over to that 3rd corner here. We are almost there. It's only 12 single crochets, so it doesn't take too long here to get on across. Okay, so here we are. I've chained 1 and we've got that chain 3 space where we skipped that whole stitch. I'm just going to go ahead and go right in there as if it was one of those chain 2s with a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet right back in that space, and then continue working right along the side here. Easy peasy. You can see it really does, whoops, there we go, create a nice corner just like the other one. If you feel like it's not quite sharp enough or you want a little more pointiness to that corner, you could do that in blocking, but I think it looks pretty darn good the way it is. So we work our way up the side here. There we are. And now I've got a chain 1 and I'm right back to where we had that first chain 1 and single crochet in that first space for row 2. So I'm going to go ahead and chain another one here to make a chain 2 and just slip stitch right in the top of that first single crochet made to finish off round 2. From there, of course, I can cut my yarn and weave in my ends. So when you're all done, you should have a beautiful moss stitch scarf. This is the Autumn Amore scarf. Again, this is part of a free crochet along. So there is a scarf pattern, a cowl pattern, a hat pattern, and very soon there will be mittens to match as well. So I hope you'll check those out, all at the link in the description and all featuring Red Heart Amore yarn. If you found this tutorial helpful, please do give it a like, let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the Moogly channel. Thanks so much for watching.